I think it's time to get a bit of a move on with our Angel of Christmas and to try and finish her dress. And as you can see, she has these massive gaps in her dress, like we discussed before. Some of these gaps are going to be filled by beads, but most of them are going to be filled by speciality thread, and that's what we're talking about today. So these parts of her dress and this part here is like fur, and for that we're going to use Wisper Thread. And then the rest of her dress is going to be metallic threads, and that's what I'm going to start with because I think metallic thread is a more commonly used speciality thread, and so it would probably be helpful if we started with the metallics. The most commonly called for metallic threads in cross stitch are Rainbow Gallery's Petite Treasure Braid and Kreinik's number 4 braid, which is here. Now my Kreinik does come on a spool, but Kreinik has now been sold to Rainbow Gallery, and the newer Kreinik is also coming on a card. So your Kreinik may come on a spool or on a card, but it's the same thing, so you don't need to worry about it. These are the threads which are called for in our Angel of Christmas piece. They're all Kreinik, so we have 205C, the C stands for cord, and it's this kind of gold and black cord basically. This one is 002 and this one is 202HL. The HL stands for high luster, and it just means that it's a incredibly shiny thread, even more shiny than the usual metallic threads. Now what you may notice, if you can see, is that they all have number 4 written on the top, and that number 4 is referring to the thickness of the thread. So you'll also find that there is a number 8, and there's just lots of different thicknesses in Kreinik, in the Rainbow Gallery Treasure Braid as well. So you just want to make sure when you're ordering that you're getting the right thickness of thread. So for example, here I have number 4 in 205C, and here I have the cord in 205C. So even though they're the same code and the same color, they are nothing alike. They're just totally different when it comes to their thickness. So you couldn't really substitute one for the other. So that's why that number on the top is really important. That's your thickness. And most of the time in cross stitch, they are asking for the number 4 braid. So our 205C here, I have plenty of, so we're good to go with that. But unfortunately, due to that sale of Kreinik to Rainbow Gallery, there are a few little supply issues at the moment, and I don't have very much of either of these threads, and I can't get any more. So I've decided to do a substitution. Now, I always advise a little caution when substituting threads, but I think with metallics, it's a lot easier to do. And I personally think they don't always have to be exact to get a great effect. So I'm a lot more confident substituting in metallics than I am substituting regular cotton. So for our 202HL, I have decided to substitute in diamond from DMC in D3821. They're not an exact match. They're actually a lot closer in person than they're showing on camera. The Kreinik is a tiny bit darker and I would say slightly warmer, whereas the DMC is a little bit lighter. But the reason I chose the DMC is because it has this very, very high shine finish that you get with these Kreinik, these high luster Kreiniks. So that's why I chose the DMC. It was more so for the effect, that real high shine effect, rather than to be an exact colour match. For our 002, that's the wrong side, our 002 Kreinik, I have substituted in Petite Treasure Braid in PB03. There are lots of charts and tables available online for substituting in Kreinik and Treasure Braid. Just always make sure that you're getting your thickness. So like I said, our Kreinik is a number 4, very fine braid, and our Treasure Braid is the Petite Treasure Braid. So they are roughly equal in their thickness and both will work really well for our project. So here we are at the back of our work. I've already made a start, as you can see, and I'm just going to show you how I work this metallic thread. So here I have my needle threaded up with one strand of DMC diamond. We usually only use one strand when working with these metallics. And I don't know if you can see, but I've actually threaded it through a bigger needle than I would usually use on 32 count. So on this count of fabric, I would usually use a size 28 needle. This is a size 24, a larger needle. Two reasons for that. The first is it has a bigger eye, so it's easier to thread with these metallics. They can be a little bit tricky. The second reason is that the actual needle itself is a little wider. It's going to stretch the fabric a little bit as it goes through. That's going to widen the hole and it's going to make it easier for the metallic to pass through the fabric. So that's why I've gone up to a size 24 for this. So we're only using one strand. We can't use the loop start method. So we're going to weave our thread in through the back of some existing stitches. Now I want to start somewhere around here. So what I'm going to do, I hope you can see, is I'm going to run my needle in through the back of some existing stitches, which are here. And then if I can get a grip on it, I'm going to pull it through. So we have our little tail, just a tiny bit. Now, if this was cotton, I would just leave it as is and start stitching. But because it is a metallic thread, I find they can be a little slippy and they can come loose. So what I like to do now is go in the opposite direction, maybe on a row, the next row up or 2 rows up, it doesn't really matter. The next row of stitches and just pull it back in the opposite direction. And now it's a lot tighter. So that's secure and that's how we're going to anchor our thread in when we are beginning a new thread. Back at the front of our work now, and I have my diamond ready to go. So working with any metallic thread is not that much different to working with a normal strand of cotton. I would just advise that you take your time, keep your eye out for any kind of knots or any kind of snagging. Like I said, sometimes using a slightly larger needle can just stretch out the holes in your fabric a little bit and make the thread glide through. So here I'm going to do 2 stitches beside each other and I'm just going to use our old faithful Dutch method, which we spoke about in an earlier video. So I'm doing both of my bottom legs and then turning back and doing both of my top legs. If I can, does it want to go in? There we go. And like I always say, just make sure you're keeping the direction of your legs consistent. So all your bottom legs going in the same direction, all your top legs going in the same direction. But yeah, that's our DMC diamond. And hopefully you can see, possibly it's not going to show up. It gives the most beautiful high shine finish. And when you kind of hold it back, it almost looks like little beads or little gemstones. It's a really, really beautiful thread to work with. So now we're on to our Wisper thread. And the way I like to work Wisper is by using one strand of Wisper and one strand of a matching DMC. So in this case, I have blank. Some people prefer to work in a different way. A lot of people like to use DMC for the bottom leg of the stitch and then Wisper for the top leg of the stitch. But I just prefer to use a combination of Wisper and DMC together to work a full cross stitch as normal. So here I have one strand of Wisper, one strand of DMC cut to the same length and held together. And I'm going to come to one end of the thread and I'm going to twist them together. So twist and twist and twist and twist and twist. And the reason I'm doing this is to make threading the needle easier. So we twist them together, we get a little loop that almost looks like one thread, and that's going to make threading the needle easier. Of course, you can use a needle threader if it's easier for you. Once my little hoop is through the needle, I just pull it through until the tail end has been pulled through. And now we are ready to start our work. And once again, I'm using a size 24 needle, just like the metallic thread, because it's easier, I think, to work Wisper with a bigger needle. Like with our metallic thread, I'm going to start our DMC and Wisper by running it through, where do we want to start? We want to start there. So I'm going to run it through the back of some existing stitches and then pulling it. It's a little bit tangled, but I'm just going to pull it through and leave a little bit of a tail end just at the end, and now we're ready to start our stitching. Stitching with Wisper thread is really no different to stitching with normal DMC. You just have to be a little bit cautious that you don't allow it to get knotted because it can be a little sticky. But other than that, you can just stitch away as you would with your DMC. And I do find that using a little bit of a larger needle does make the whole process that little bit easier. So when you've finished stitching with your Wisper, you can either leave it as is, or what a lot of people like to do is to kind of fluff it up to get that real furry effect. A few ways of doing this: you can use Velcro, you can use special tools. I like to go in with a toothbrush. This is just I suppose a toddler's toothbrush. It is unused, needless to say. And then you kind of go over it and you start brushing at it, and that will loosen that mohair a little bit, and that will give it that fluffy look. It takes a little bit of time. I'm not going to do it really for this piece now because I want to wash this piece, and so I'm going to wash it first and then we can go in with our toothbrush. You may also see that there are a few little lines here, like bumps, and this is just where the thread became thick. I don't worry too much about this because when we really fluff it up, a lot of that will even out. So I don't worry too much about that. So here is an overview of our angel after we have added on her Wisper thread and the metallic threads. You can see we've now finished these details on her dress, and again they're going to be fluffed up. And as we move down, we can really see that she is really starting to come together. And of course, the next step is going to be beading. And this particular project has a huge amount of beads. So I think once the beading is done, we will really, really have something special. So yeah, that's the end of our speciality threads. And now we move on to beading.